Hey guys, we're live. Very tough week to face up and do the live recap, but we do it every week. Rain, hail, or shine. Please let me know if you can hear me, see me. Let me know what your moment of round 22 was. Hopefully there was a couple of positives in there for you. Maybe the mixed matchup streak at least. And let me just set this up with my graphics and sharing into the Tripod Facebook group. Thanks, guys. All right, I think that's all good. Let me see comments. Yeah, I've just been hearing about Turbo. Maybe I'll touch on that at the start of this show. That was one positive. There was a couple of positives this round, but it was pretty bleak. Stats took a hit this week. So definitely no fun having a round like that, but that is all part of punting, unfortunately. All right, welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. This is the round 22 live recap, where we've had the worst round of the season. And even in the worst round, we had a couple of positives at least. But from a best bet perspective, 6 plays, which I think was the most or equal most of a round. And we've gone 1 and 5. We won the mixed matchup at least, which actually we won by 32 points. So that extends that streak of 12 wins from the last 13. 70% these are cashing at. These are underdog prices that are cashing 70%. So that's a positive. We're $1.01 to win the 15-1 regular season multi, with the Tigers getting that win. So that's a positive as well. Now, before I jump into every game and obviously talk about all the games that we lost best bets, and there were 5 of them, I'll talk a little bit of theory about what goes into having a round like this. Because naturally, when you lose 5 best bets, you second guess. I certainly do second guess it. Like even during a match, if a game is not going our way, I start to say, should I have been on that? Was I that confident, or was I more borderline? Like, obviously in a round where we go badly, I think if only I'd left aside the borderline plays, the damage wouldn't have been as bad. But it's the opposite in a round where we sweep. I think, oh man, we won all our best bets and I should have grabbed a couple more where I leaned and it went that way. So I think you always second guess yourself. Now, in terms of how I judge, like, was it a good bet or not? The number one thing I use myself to judge if I think it was a good bet or not is just how the game unfolds. So I watch it. I acknowledge like the moments, the half chances, the key moments. Often you see a game and one team just clearly dominates, and you'd be fair to say that if that game was replayed, you'd clearly want to be on that one side. And then there's other games where the final result finishes very close to, what the predicted line was. And you say, yeah, maybe I won or maybe I was on the wrong side of it. But really, it was close either way. And those are the ones that you ideally don't actually want to have a best bet on, games that are going to fall right near the number, because you're never going to win a huge percentage of them. You also do look at something called closing line value, which I will just touch on because I know a lot of people in punting groups certainly talk about that. So that's where, depending on what line we play on a Wednesday, our goal is obviously to get a better line than what it closes at. And the idea is that the closer we get to kick off, the more information is out there, the more money is in the marketplace, the sharper the line becomes, because anybody who saw value in any of the lines obviously would have bet into it. And the idea is that what that line closes at is the best reflection you can possibly get. Therefore, if you get a better line than the closing line, like we did with the Storm, like we did with the Panthers, like we did with the Cowboys, like we did with Manly, and like we did with the Bulldogs and with the Knights, so 6 out of 6, in theory, you made 6 good bets. But I definitely don't just just subscribe to that. I think that's just a little part of it. It's certainly a good thing if you can make a bet and the line, moves in the direction where you've got a good number for sure. But I'm not one to say, I beat the line, therefore I was right. Certainly some of these games, if I had my time over, I wouldn't bet again. And you've also got to admit that there's a self-fulfilling prophecy there that we have an influence on the market with tripod play. So when I share something that's a best bet, sometimes it moves the market. So if I share a bet and it's, Penrith minus 18.5 and the line moves to 20.5, I can't say, there it proves it was a great bet because the line moved, because we shared it. So there's a bit of chicken egg thing there. That's not a perfect example because Nathan Cleary got ruled in the next day as well. But I also just think what happened this round where we lost 4 different best bets were within 4 points. So we had like 4 of the 5 losses, 1 try, and it could have been a winner. Now, I'm not saying they were correct plays, but I think we just got our dose of close losses. I've actually been saying all year, part of the reason that our winning percentage is so great is we've probably won our fair share of the close ones. And so that all kind of sometimes catches up. That's regression, whatever you want to call it. So I don't think I had a good round. Not trying to defend the tips. We'll go tip by tip. But obviously, even though I kind of knew a losing round was inevitable, it still really hurts. And especially it is frustrating to lose very close ones. But as I said, this season, I think we've been winning well over 60%, but winning basically 2 for every 1 loss. It just doesn't mean you go 4-2 every week or 3-2 every week. You have your week where you sweep, and then you have your week where you very much get humbled. So that's why I always preach responsible gambling, because that's just inevitable. That's something that happens, and it's happened to us many times over the last 7 years. And you go back to the drawing board a little bit with your plays, but sometimes you actually come back with a stronger edge next week because some of the teams that you saw value on, it didn't play out that way, and maybe the information you think you have or the edges you have over the bookie remain in your favor. So we'll see how we go. Of course, we'll get back to the drawing board and back to the lab to try and find some winners on Wednesday, as always. But I think on that note, let's jump into the games. So let's begin with the first game of the round, which started off with a loss, and that was I'll just answer the question there. Are you saying you would not have chosen 6 best bets if not for the sweep last round? No, I'm not saying that. I'm very cautious of I don't want to start trying to get ambitious and add extra plays. It doesn't bother me whether I share 1 best bet, 2, 5, 10 in a round. I really just try and think, what would I have my money on? I look game by game. So I think you guys have noticed, there's no real pattern for how many plays I come up with per round. It really just depends on how many games jump out at me. All right, let's talk about Storm Raiders. The Storm only beat the Raiders 26-16. It was a little bit of a surprise. We laid the minus 23.5, closes 25.5. Nelson Asafa-Solomona is ruled out after the pod. Not ideal. Finucane cops a head knock in the first minute of the game. Again, not ideal. But at the end of the day, the Storm were up 20-4 at halftime. So a 16-point lead at halftime. After conceding the first try, they scored 20 straight points. I was more than happy on that bet. I really wasn't too nervous in the second half. But the Storm just, I guess, whether they ran out of momentum because they have been missing a few forwards. You got Kamikamica also on the pine with an injury, and has that caught up with this side? I'm just going to call into question some of the superstars on the Storm. Is it just me, or is Munster been a bit out of sorts? I don't know. Was he pushing to recover from injuries and played in Origin underdone? He doesn't feel like that electric threat where I would have definitely said Munster is one of the best 5 players in the competition, no doubt. To me, he's still a great player in a well-oiled machine, but not that guy that's just creating a try out of nothing as often. That's just how I see it. And the same for Pappenhausen, who they're trying to work back into the team, and he's always coming back onto the field with 20 or 30 minutes to go in the game. And I'm not seeing the Storm get a boost from that. If anything, there's a drop-off when they're taking Hines off and they're putting Papi. And it's, I'm not criticizing the Storm because they've got to work him back in. He's had a long layoff, and the ceiling of the Storm is probably higher when they get Papi firing. But I'm just trying to explain why the Storm haven't covered 3 of the last 4 games and were a bit underwhelming and didn't score a try second half. But you also give credit to the Raiders. I did talk about points differentials critical for these sides on the bubble. The Raiders hung tough. In fact, they were within 6 points for a long period in the second half and had some terrible errors themselves on the Storm's goal line. You never know if they'd actually been a bit sharper. Could they have really scared the Storm? In the end, the Storm kicked a couple of late penalty goals, only won by 10. We lost our best bet. Moving to Friday, this is the bet where I would definitely play over and over again. Like, I definitely feel like we had a great one here, just didn't win. And that was the Panthers beating the Dragons 34-16. So that was a winning margin of 18. And the best bet was minus 18.5. So lost by half a point there. And what hurts even more is when you're laying that big number and the favorite that you're on actually gets that lead and gets beyond that number and then gets backdoored. And unfortunately, that's what happened here with the Panthers. Now, Cleary returned and looked strong. Certainly the Dragons tried to test him out, but he made his tackles, took some, held his own running the ball, kicked well, and boosted the Panthers. And I think by the time this game kicked off, the line was over 22, maybe minus 22, 23.5. We certainly benefited in the first half, I've got to admit as well. Corey Norman throwing 2 intercepts, one directly to a try and one a try came straight afterwards. But I actually thought those would be the backbreakers for the Dragons because in the second half, Panthers came out executing. Burton still looks great playing in the centers. And the Panthers got up 28-6, where there was still 25 minutes to go. Now, if I was live betting or something, I would be thinking at that point in the game that the Panthers are going to win 40 plus. So again, feeling really great about the bet. And then the Panthers just don't take any more opportunities to really pound the Dragons into the ground. And somewhat against the run of play, Dragons make a break, score a try with a few minutes to go. And I think there's a sin bin for Penrith as well, which then makes their chances of responding a little bit reduced. And they lose our best bet by half a point there, kind of going to sleep. That's not the Penrith of old or of earlier or last year or earlier this year where they were ruthless, but I think they're still trying to find their feet. And unfortunately, that cost us. We got backdoored in that situation. And then when we had some other best bets in the balance later in the round, we couldn't get in the back door. Again, that's just when it's within a try, it's always possible. Any team can score against any other team, even if a little bit of luck is involved in this competition. So that's why I would have liked Penrith to extend their lead. One more thing I will say about the Dragons, they're probably dead, and the Dragons need to miss the 8 to make sure we win our 15-1 multi. That's the only leg that's even possibly in contention because we've got every other team has either made the 8, missed the 8 for sure, and Tigers have got their 8 wins. The Dragons would have to win their final 3 games. Now, I just want to point out they play the Roosters next week, who have a lot of injuries and guys facing the judiciary. I still think the Roosters will win that game. But if the Dragons upset the Roosters, I believe the Dragons then play the Cowboys, which is certainly very winnable for the Dragons. And then the Dragons play Souths in the final game of the season. Now, we would have all looked at the schedule and said, well, no way are they beating Souths. But I just have this sickening feeling that if second and third can't change position or there's no difference because it's going to be on a neutral venue, you could get what South Sydney doing what the Storm did last year, which is playing your whole reserve side in round 25. And you could get the Dragons with an outside chance of making the 8, playing the Bunnies' second team in round 25. So I'm not going to claim victory on our 15-1 multi, but the only way it loses is the Dragons who are on a 5-game losing streak to win the final 3 of the year and boost their points difference. Very unlikely. That's why I said at the start, we're $1.01 to win the 15-1. So even in a bad week, there was a couple of silver linings. Let's move to a really entertaining game, which was Broncos-Roosters, Broncos hosting the Roosters, and the Roosters got one over them just 21-20, a game I didn't have a best bet on or a play on. But yeah, as I said, entertaining because Brisbane was up for it and matched the Roosters most of the way. I thought their props led the way, as Payne Haas, as he always does, but Flegler was massive. And equally, the Roosters props, Taukeiaho and Liu, were both big as well. And then I thought Teddy was ultimately the difference, captain's knock for him. And this game could have gone either way. Brisbane got their noses in front, trying to kick a field goal to, Sam Walker, clutch field goal, puts Roosters in front late. But then Albert Kelly, who is a really good footy player, and since Kelly has come back, I think that's one of the reasons why Brisbane's had a little bit more life playing halfback there. He goes for a field goal, as you probably saw. Radley dives, purely just trying to charge down the field goal or contest it, and makes contact with the legs. I think it has to be called a penalty, even though it's really harsh. So Brisbane gets in front, and then Brisbane just has to hold the ball for the last 2 minutes and probably wins the game. They spill it, and then the controversial penalty back the other way for the Roosters, where the Roosters drop the ball in the play the ball, and the weird quirk of the rules allowed them to challenge anything that had happened in the play leading up to that, and they found that Flegler basically just brushed can't remember which Roosters player it was now, but just grazed across the face, really. I mean, maybe I'm being harsh. Maybe it was a little bit of a smack across the beak, but it was not a lot in it. But the bunker gets put in a very tough position because they see the slow motion replay and they see contact to the head. But it's just weird that if the Roosters didn't lose the ball in the play the ball, there wouldn't have been any challenge. It would have been play on, and it was late in the tackle count, and they were down 1. Then that penalty, and still had to slot it. Adam Kieran steps up and slots it from out wide. But the penalty obviously gives them the chance to turn a deficit into a lead, and that wins them the game. Huge for the Roosters. There's rumors out today, and I'm just literally getting text messages from people, so I'm not going to be like breaking the official news. But rumors that Tommy Trbojevic had a fractured cheekbone. And I've heard contrary reports. Someone said he's been cleared and he could play next week. And even in the comments, someone asked, should we be jumping on the Raiders now? I've heard that some bookies have pulled down their top 4 odds. So regardless, put that to the side because Manly, without Turbo, they're not the same team, but I think they can still win the games they need to win in the final 3. They're in great form. And the Roosters have the box seat. They're 2 points higher on the ladder than Manly. And getting that win by the narrowest margin in Brisbane just keeps their noses in front. And what an achievement it would be by the Roosters with the injury toll they've had to make the 4. And especially if this Turbo news ends up being true, even more reason that could happen. So next game was another one I didn't have a best bet on, but I've talked about it, the form of the Rabbitohs. And the Rabbitohs did win 36-6 against the Titans in their home stadium. The Titans, I thought, were pretty poor after beating 3 really soft opponents the last 3 weeks for a so-called winning streak. But, as I've said each week, Titans had to win those games and the opponents were really weak. They came up against real class competition and they couldn't hang with them. And a game like this kind of makes me think the Titans don't deserve to be making the finals, really, because they couldn't compete at all with the Rabbitohs. But the truth is there's such a gulf that a team like the Gold Coast Titans still definitely could be making it. So they also had to protect their points difference. In a sense, they did, because I think this was 36-0 or 30-0 with 20 to go. And it looked again like they could have got beat by 50, the Titans. And actually, I think the Rabbitohs put their cue in the rack. But leading up to that, Latrell was just insatiable. Cody Walker, much the same. Damien Cook. These guys had a field day, and they were never threatened by the Titans. Moving to the next game Saturday, which mixed feelings about this one because it helped us win the mixed matchup and it helped us win, hopefully, our 15-1 multi. But we lost another best bet here. So we had the Cowboys plus 4.5, but they did lose at home 24-16 to the Tigers. And this was a really painful game to watch. And that's, unfortunately, if you follow me, if you follow the tripod for the last 7 years, and if you followed this season and you want to be on all the plays, you're going to get painful ones because we like to back teams that other people don't want to back. And then sometimes you feel really smart when you back these ugly ducklings and it gets up. But you also get the occasions where you back the garbage teams and they play like garbage and you just feel dumb. And that's why I always say, guys, don't back it blindly, because I hate the comments that I get like, oh, I should never have trusted you. I never agreed with that tip. And I kind of think, well, don't back it unless you agree with it. Like, because it's just like for your own psychology, basically, you're going to get angry if you follow someone's tip that you don't agree with and then it loses. So you might as well only follow tips you agree with. But yeah, it was just painful because the Cowboys were so terrible. Like, especially fifth tackle options was just awful all night. They just did everything a bit worse than the Tigers. Now, the part of this game I think I got right was the Tigers never blew them away. The Tigers weren't that great. The Tigers just kind of turned up and put in a standard performance by their standards. But the part that really frustrated and disappointed me was that the Cowboys were worse than usual. And in the wash-up, Todd Payton just puts it all down to, oh, I got a couple guys out of positions. I got a couple kids out there. To me, if you actually watch the way they play, it's not an excuse. Like, a lot of teams have dealt with a lot of different personnel and having to plug holes. And it's just the way that the Cowboys played. And it even makes you more frustrated, the fact that the Cowboys started playing footy at the end of the game when it was lost. And when they were down 24-6, started playing with a bit of speed and started throwing the ball around. But up until that point, they're incredibly clunky. They weren't physical enough. They didn't win the arm wrestles. And as I said, they didn't win the kicking contest. But I guess the one part I said that I did get right was that the Tigers didn't blow them away. And that meant the Tigers only posted 26 points. And the mixed matchup was that we needed Seagulls, Manly, to score more than the Tigers, which again seemed crazy on Wednesday that we could get the Seagulls to score more than the Tigers at an underdog price. But the Tigers had a much easier opponent on paper. It didn't turn out that way. I don't know if I've got any more notes on, I should say as well, credit to the Tigers, Dwayne, Brooks, and Twal, I thought was really big for him in the middle. Oh, and there was a funny moment as well for the Cowboys where they were kind of coming back in the second half, and Jordan McLean took this massive run and off his own goal line ran like 20 meters. And Brandy said, that's the best run McLean's had in years. And I actually thought, what an indictment on McLean that he's gone up to the Cowboys. He's actually played for Australia before, played in a premiership-winning Storm team, and he ran for 20 meters as a prop. And Brandy said that's his best run in years, and it's probably true. Like, I don't think that's much of a compliment to somebody. It kind of shows what underperformance the Cowboys have gotten out of some of their big money men, unfortunately. Moving to Manly, talk about underperforming. That's the Eels right now, who got beaten 56-10. There's a comment there that Turbo's out for the season, but again, do your own research, guys. I'd suggest, but that would be huge. But I won't try and react too much to those rumors because I don't know for sure. Turbo was at his usual best in this one, so certainly I hope that's not true because he's the best player in the world right now. And as I said, Manly won 56-10. And glowing light here, we did win a couple of bets. We won our best bet quite easily, which was Manly 13 plus. And again, it annoys me too when the one win we have wins by more than 30 points. And as I said, we had 4 losses within a converted try. You'd much rather it be the other way. I'm happy to have a couple of best bets get flogged if we win a few close ones. But it all kind of balances out through a season, I suppose. What to say? The thing is, if you watch this game, it's hard to say how much of it was Manly being awesome and how much of it was the Eels being bad, because the Eels looked lifeless. They looked like lacking enthusiasm across the park. And then on top of it, their errors were diabolical, where anytime you thought the Eels maybe would pose a threat, they spilled the ball. So it was quite an easy watch for the Seagulls. And in fact, they eclipsed the 24 that we needed for the mixed matchup in the first half. I think 29th minute, they went in for a try. See another comment coming through. Turbo will just be out 2 to 4 weeks. So again, we'll see where the dust settles with that one. But Garrick also had a field day. He had 3 tries. But yeah, Turbo was awesome, as he always is. I think Turbo had a try and 4 assists in that one. And the Eels, the only place they can go from here is that they know they can't drop below 6th. So for them, it's almost like you almost go easy on the boys, let them all freshen up, and it almost doesn't matter what Parramatta does in the next 3 weeks. They can somewhat salvage. No, I think no matter what, this season's a failure for Parramatta now, falling out of the 4. But they've just got to have their eyes set on, we've got to win that finals game. And realistically, Parramatta will be playing somebody that won't be too good for them. And then you win that first finals game, and then you see what happens. You play somebody that might have been in a war in round 1. And realistically, Para probably bows out by the second week of the finals. There's nothing you're seeing that would show you any different. It's I've talked about guys like Joey Manu having a great year for the fact that he gets to negotiate his next contract in November. And Gutho, it's kind of the opposite. It's a really bad time for a form slump for the Eels. And I don't think it's really Gutho playing that bad, but he thrives when Parramatta are dominating games. And you're seeing what difference is between a real $1 million player like Turbo versus a guy like Gutho, who's an awesome player, but certainly looks better when a team is front running and isn't necessarily a guy that turns a game or that can put a team on his back. So Eels are really struggling, and Seagulls, depending on this Turbo news, obviously, are pushing and a real chance to make the 4. I think it is really 50-50 between the Seagulls and the Roosters. Seagulls probably have more winnable games in the final 3, but the Roosters do have their noses in front. Moving to today, and again, we lost the best bet. Narrow, I don't think it was necessarily a great bet, but we had the Bulldogs plus 9.5, and they lost the game 24-10. And my assessment, first of all, the Warriors just look like they're enjoying their footy. Now, that's 3 wins in a row after a couple of upset victories. The Warriors were definitely expected to win today, and they did. They certainly love playing daytime footy, throwing it around. And a guy I shouted out last week, Josh Curran, is really a serious footy player for this team. I think he was the Warriors' best on ground again today. The Doggies, there wasn't much positive to say about them. Like, even in the first half, their first try was an intercept try, which I always talk about how those are killers. So that was a big benefit for us. It kept the doggies in it, and the doggies also scored on the stroke of half time. And then it was 22-10 to the Warriors for the longest period in the second half. And I was kind of thinking, God, just, either the Dogs can strike back and we can still cover, or otherwise just put us out of our misery, Warriors, because the Warriors were attacking their line. And I guess if you're going to give some credit to the Dogs, they just held the Warriors at bay. There were no tries. Oh, no, sorry. There was one try in the second half, which was to the Warriors. I think that's right, and a penalty goal as well. And that was it. And the Dogs had their chances. In fact, there was a moment that really hurt us in this game where the Warriors spilled the ball on their own goal line. The Dogs picked it up and scored. But after the player had spilled the ball, might have been Kosi who spilled the ball, they then got hit high and late afterwards, unnecessarily, basically got blasted after he dropped the ball. And the bunker had a look at it and decided that the late and high contact was foul play, obviously, and then ruled out the try. So that was a killer. And even late on, Dogs got repeat sets on the Warriors line, spilled the ball. Nothing new there. So again, if we would have got that late backdoor try, we could have covered, but we didn't necessarily deserve it. The Dogs were just so bad. I mean, the penalty count didn't help. The Dogs got killed with the penalty count, but I really thought it was their own doing as well. Thought their discipline was useless, and it looked like they didn't want to defend a whole set. They wanted to try and strip the ball every second tackle, and they were stripping it with multiple men in the tackle and then shaking their heads when there were penalties coming. So again, that was another, tough watch, because we had a chance all the way till the final siren. We're within a score of covering, but we never got it. And then we lost another one by 3.5 points here to close out the round. The Knights beat the Sharks 16-14. From a neutral perspective, great game, exciting game, finals intensity. It felt like these teams were playing for their season, and it came all the way down to the wire. But again, really frustrating for us because we had Knights minus 5.5, and that line closes 8.5, and you feel really good about it going into the game. And then the Knights scored the quickest try, or fastest try, in the last 3 years, I believe. They scored 48 seconds into the game. So again, you're feeling pretty confident. Although I've just had this weird feeling watching them play in those high-vis jerseys. It doesn't seem like they've made a lot of great memories in those high-vis jerseys. The Newcastle Knights, Dan Lever's commenting right now, so he can let me know if they've ever done anything good in those jerseys. But you just have to give some credit to the Sharkies. They're not going to, that's not a moral victory for them. They're going to be really hurting right now. They've had a really tough spell the last few weeks. But credit to the Sharkies in terms of covering, because they looked more likely. The Sharkies played the more positive footy, I thought. The Sharkies looked to have more speed. I think I talked about one of the reasons I liked the Knights in this game was I thought they had more game breakers. And in the end, I think a guy like Bradman Best, when they got him early ball and he was breaking tackles, and ultimately Bradman Best kind of out of nothing broke a tackle, got an offload away, which was an assist for the try to Tuala, which I think leveled the scores up. And then Ponga drew the penalty late as well. So those key plays ultimately was the difference, but not enough of a difference for us to cover the game. So I think it was a tough one for the Sharks. There was also a key moment late in this game where the Sharkies were forcing the Knights back on their own goal line and about to push the Knights into their in goal. And I thought there was a very early held call, which then killed the Sharks because the momentum was already pushing the Knights into their in goal. But when they ended up there, sure enough, they called it a penalty. And then the Knights, off the back of that, got off their goal line and scored the winning points. So that was a tough one for the Sharkies. There was also a crazy moment where the Sharks looked like they might score a length of the field try. Metcalf bursting through the line, and somehow Barnett comes up with one of the craziest one-on-one strips at full speed and goes back the other way that you'll ever see. Again, that was a big moment, although the Knights didn't ultimately capitalise. He may have saved a try, which may have saved the Knights' season. It's that big. Obviously, that definitely gives the Knights huge ascendancy to be one of the teams that gets one of those last two final spots. So that'll do it, guys. Again, sorry for the results. Like I always tell people in the group, you don't apologize when you get it wrong because you can't expect to win every time, but it's still, never fun. And when people follow me, especially, I take it hard when we lose. And we'll just have to try and rebound and go again next week. And as long as we're making smart plays. I always say, hopefully, that we're going to win more than we lose, and that's what we'll continue to hopefully try and do. And again, at least there was a couple of positives to come out of this round, although not many. So let's see if we can bounce back next week. If we can, and if you want to tune in live, that will be on Wednesday night, 5:45 on YouTube. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the support. Always gamble responsibly and Lego.